Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me again or just listening in general. I very much appreciate it. This is, of course, the podcast I Do What I Want. I am Hollis, the author slash host of said podcast. And on this podcast, I talk about writing, I talk about book-related things, and, sometimes just fun historical anecdotes that are related to book things, which is all very important. Anyway, today we are actually talking about character development, which I'm really excited to talk about that. I am going to keep it short because I'm trying to keep these podcast episodes like around 30 minutes. I'm really trying. So we're going to keep it short, but really quickly, I wanted to make a couple of announcements. Really just one big announcement. It's that I am going to be developing a writer's workshop on character development, hence this episode. So in the workshop, I still have kinks to work out, and I still have some things that I need to figure out. It will be an online Zoom workshop, so no matter where you are in the world, if you have an internet connection and can log into a Zoom meeting, you can absolutely attend this workshop. I will record the workshop and make the recordings available for a limited amount of time afterward. If if there's some crazy time zone difference or schedule conflict or whatever. But anyway, that's all details we don't need to worry about right now. But the workshop, I'm thinking it will be about 3 hours long, and it will take you through at least my process of character development, where we will actually create characters. And hey, maybe it's just going to be a fun day, or maybe you'll actually create a character that you will use in a future project. Who knows? Or hey, a role-playing game, whatever. My process, as you'll see, is heavily role-playing game based, because as I've said a million times, my roots are in playing Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. So there's that coming up, which I'm really excited. And at the end of the podcast, when I sign off, I'm going to give you another little update on The Queen Witch, the sequel to Save a World, which there's not a whole bunch going on, but I am excited. I've been playing with the designs. So let's jump into character development. Character development is really, really important. Well, why is that, Hollis? Well, let me tell you, because if you don't develop your characters, if they don't have a personality and faults and talents and good qualities, and if they don't have all of these things, then they're not a real person to the reader. And therefore, they're not fun to read about. The magic of books, and the magic of any character, really, be it television, theater, whatever, the magic of a character is that they are so relatable, or that they are so intrinsically human, even if they're a fictional imaginary thing, or person, rather. It could be a thing, could be a plant, for all we, I write fantasy, we can have anything. But that's the thing, is you have to develop your characters, because you don't just want this one-dimensional being. Even a simple little side character that is a merchant at a shop that your characters interact with for, just a couple of paragraphs to buy something. It just lends so much more reality to the story, and more depth, and more interest for the reader to talk about how the shopkeeper had a gruff voice but a friendly face, and he was, wearing a dirty apron and that kind of thing, but he seemed friendly enough, that sort of, you want to give them a little something more and let them really dive in and understand. So So, of course, your main characters, the ones that drive your story, are the most important to develop and the ones that you should focus on first and foremost. But every single character, every single living thing that you give voice to in your book, even if it is just for a moment in the story, you should give them the dimension of a real person. So that, or animal, or whatever, so that the reader can see that gruff yet friendly shopkeeper with a dirty apron. It's just one of those really, really nice things. And, as a reader, I certainly enjoy books a lot better that do this. So, that's why it's important. And for your main characters, it's, 10 times more important, because you as the writer, not just from the reader's perspective, but you as the writer, especially for the characters that are driving your story, you need to develop your characters first, because your characters are driving your plot. And even if you're a plotter, even if you're the type of writer who meticulously outlines every chapter, everything like that, that's great if that's your style, but you still need to understand, while you're meticulously outlining your whole thing, exactly how your individual characters will react to situations, each other outside influences, everything, the weather. What if somebody's allergic to pollen? Oh, it makes a huge difference. So you need to understand their motivations, their allergies, apparently, their likes, their dislikes, and sensitivities, all of it. You need to be able to do that, because if you get a little stuck, doing good character development will also get you through writer's block. I have found personally. And that's something that's really nice as well. If you develop your characters well enough so that they truly are a being unto themselves with a whole personality. And there are certain aspects of the personality that you might develop with your character initially that will never end up in the book, but you know that. And it helps you to write them later. And if you are in a place where suddenly you don't know if the character's going to go right or left at a crossroad, then you can just go, okay, you know what? This character's superstitious. They would flip a coin. They would say heads right, tails left, and they would go wherever that coin told them to. And that's exactly the kind of, it can get you. It can get you to your next steps. It can help bridge those writing block gaps and those little stops that happen sometimes. You give the character enough life early on, and the story flows so much better. You have a floodgate as opposed to a trickle. At least I personally find that when my characters are well developed, because all I have to think about when I get a little stuck is, how would they react to that? And then boom, I have my next chapter sometimes. So, moving on from the importance, I personally like to develop my characters, all the main characters, obviously little side people that they run into randomly, and that just happens as I'm writing. But your main characters, the people who are super driving your plot, I feel, need to be sussed out entirely before you start. Now, I think I've mentioned previously, I'm not 100% sure. I know in a couple of my videos, I know I have a short video on character development in my channel that I posted a couple years ago. It is available. It's in the Writing Things channel, if you, or the Writing Things section of my channel, whatever. And that, so I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. So in that little video that I did, I say that, and I still do this in large scale, I use actually a role-playing Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons character sheet. And you can get them anywhere online, just Google it, and you can even fill them out online. And you don't need to, if you're not going to actually be playing the game, don't worry about being correct, but they have important things in there like intelligence, strength, dexterity, wisdom, charisma. You have your basic stats for the character. You have a whole set of skills that you can choose. You have to choose a class for your character, meaning is that character a druid? Are they a fighter? Are they a bard? Are, a rogue, barbarian, whatever, of course, in the different role play. And you don't have to adhere to the rules of the game, but if you are finding that having more guidelines helps you, by all means, look up how to fill out a character sheet in one of these RPG games and give yourself that help. That is extremely helpful, especially if you don't know. But in most cases, most people know that, for example, they're going to have a male character who is a bard. Maybe he is a little bit on, he's very strong of heart and mind, but he's a little wimpy of body. And of course, since he's a bard, he's a singer, he's very musically talented. Maybe he's very witty. Maybe he's got a really fun little sense of humor and he jokes around a lot. And people do that a lot with bard characters, of course. The Witcher is, and I've totally blanked on the name of the bard in The Witcher, but of course he has a lot of good quips and things like that. But just choosing what their profession or class is really helps drive the personality, because of course certain personality types are attracted to certain lifestyles, professions, that sort of thing. Somebody who's a little more unscrupulous is going to be maybe on the roguish side. Maybe they're going to be a rogue and they're not going to have a problem with picking pockets and things like that. But then you get to decide how good or bad they are. Are they just like a petty criminal who's not a bad person, but they don't care about the law? Or are they just a really bad person who just does all the bad things for all the bad reasons? And that's something to play with. And so I do that, and I write out, and you write things in there like, how many languages do they speak? And of course, that's also based on the intelligence. So you fill out their stats first, right? And you can roll for them if you're feeling like doing it up to chance, but decide, say, okay, well, this character is going to be very academically intelligent. So I'm going to give them an intelligence of 15 to 17. I'm going to, but they're not very agile or dexterous, if you will. So their dexterity is going to be like a 2 or whatever, maybe they're clumsy, so their dexterity is low, but maybe their charisma is high because maybe they trip over things, but they can laugh at themselves and it's a big smile, all of that sort of thing. And you can fill all of that out. And then that really helps because all of a sudden you've already started to develop their personality. And you have this whole like, okay, well, somebody who is clumsy but charismatic, they are probably very extroverted. They're used to laughing at themselves. They don't mind if something, they don't get embarrassed, and they probably talk to a lot of people. They're probably a very extroverted person. They probably talk a lot. They probably smile and laugh a lot, which also means, most likely not so quick to anger unless certain triggers are taken in, all that kind of thing. And just deciding certain things like those basic, like how smart, how strong, how dexterous, how charismatic, how wise, which is different than intelligence. And I forget that, I don't remember all of the ones, but, there are like 7 of them, I think. Oh, constitution, health. Constitution is another one. Like, how healthy are they? Maybe they are clumsy but friendly and but maybe they're a little sickly. Maybe they're always coughing. Maybe they have a chronic something or other, or maybe they're just healthy as a horse, and who knows? But all of this actually plays into how their personality develops, because of course our personalities develop based upon our own personal situations and how the world ends up treating us in a lot of ways, and of course how it's very for me it's a very cool, almost a little bit of a scientific process. Obviously, it's not really a science, but it's really cool. It's for me it's very interesting to see how just from a few seemingly arbitrary decisions about intelligence and what have you, all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, if this person is this smart and this strong and this healthy and blah, 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 then you get a picture in your brain. And that's really excited. That's really exciting. Another thing that I think a lot of people might do. Well, actually, let me say this first, and then I'll get into what I was going for. Otherwise, is you also definitely need to suss out what the character looks like physically, and or how they feel physically. And of course, health. I talked about that, but what if your character always has a backache? Maybe they're young and they should be strong, but for some reason their back just always hurts. And okay, why does this character always have a backache? Well, maybe they fell out of a tree when they were a child and they permanently, and they just have this injury that never healed. Maybe, who knows? You have to take that into consideration. You have to take into consideration, oftentimes big burly men are considered very intimidating. But what if this big burly guy is the same person who's clumsy and really friendly and extroverted? But people, when they first see him, they wouldn't perceive, you've got a big burly person coming at you and maybe their face is just neutral. Your immediate reaction is, oh, maybe I should be a little careful sometimes, because that's you're like, there's a big stranger coming this way. I don't know. Oftentimes those people are not perceived as friendly on that appearance alone, which isn't fair, but it happens. And just like people who are very tiny and petite are often perceived as weak physically and unthreatening. And that's not necessarily, I know a lot of really petite little firecrackers that you do not want to mess with, men and women. And I know a lot of giant teddy bears. And of course these things always happen, and your physical doesn't dictate your personality, but it does help develop your personality because you learn to behave in a certain way because of how the world reacts to you. And if your character is, well, and say the character is just one of those people who's incredibly attractive. maybe you've got, Idris Elba or something, a really attractive celebrity. And or if you don't know who Idris Elba is, Selena Gomez is another really beautiful person. Physically attractive, really pretty person. And the world is automatically going to be more accepting of somebody who is physically attractive. As unfair as it is, again, they are. People are going to react more positively to the stranger who is smiling. That's another big thing. Like, does the character smile a lot? People tend to feel more comfortable just because of that, and that sort of thing. Are they automatically perceived as friendly? Are they perceived as attractive? Because if they're perceived as an attractive person, they're probably used to feeling a little safer, probably used to getting more things that they want. Maybe they're a wonderful person, or maybe they're a little spoiled. That's something to figure out. You have to kind of figure out, how does this character, number one, how would the world react to them and how they look, and or move. If they have, again, with the backache, or maybe they look completely normal, but they hunch. Yeah, like how, and so how do they react to their own body and persona? Maybe they don't even like the way they look. Maybe they have, the what's it called, the body dysmorphia, where they look wonderful, but what they see in the mirror is not, that kind of thing. Which that's getting a little more complicated, but maybe they have a big mole on their forehead and they hate it. And it bothers them, and the rest of the world kind of doesn't care about their mole, but because they're very focused on it, that it's something that happens a lot. And that's something that can change a character's behavior in a certain moment. Maybe they would make a choice to wear a hat that would drop over their forehead just to hide this, minor physical thing that they don't like about themselves. But they're going to a shady area or something, or they're going, or maybe somebody just thinks that they look shady or up to no good because they've got a giant hat covering their face, and all of a sudden the guards are going after them because the guards are like, hey, what are you doing? What are you picking pockets? Why are you hiding? And it has nothing to do with their behavior. It has everything to do with the fact that they are hiding a physical thing about themselves that they don't like. It is perceived by the outside world as a negative quality. Problems ensue. And you see, these things will drive a story. And of course, I'm just sort of talking through a lot of this, but this is why I think it's fun. Because literally you can go in any direction you want, but you just have to choose your direction. And that is also why I like to write things down with my characters. I like to write down likes and dislikes. You don't have to go nuts, just 3 and 3, honestly. You'll get more as you write them, but they can be big things, like big and tiny, silly things, like they like the sound of boiling water. They like, but they dislike rude people. And, these are things that are just like, okay, and those are two very normal things. I personally find the sound of like boiling water on the stovetop to be kind of therapeutic. I'm just like, it's a happy little bubbly sound. But then you have the, and nobody likes nobody likes to receive rudeness, so they don't like that, but they could dislike something more innocuous, like the sound of tearing paper. Maybe that bothers them. And again, maybe they're standing around and another person in the book starts ripping paper up for, I don't know, whatever reason they're ripping it up. And they just kind of are like, cringing because they hate that sound. But the other characters don't know that. Their cringing could be perceived as something else. Wackiness ensues. That's it, and it's just because if you think about yourself in a lot of ways, it's a lot easier to use ourselves as a sounding board when we're thinking of character development. You think, okay, if somebody were asked me my 3 likes and 3 dislikes, what would you say about yourself? Okay, well, I like the sound of boiling a pot on a boiling stove. I love rainbows, and I know that's kind of silly, but I get genuinely excited when I see rainbows in the sky, and it makes me happy, and they're really pretty. and it makes me, I've seen double rainbow. It's been an exciting day. That sort of, I love that stuff, but the things that I'm saying I love or I like wouldn't occur to someone else. And so you want to think about, and if I were to go and ask my husband or my friend, whomever, hey, what do you like? They might say, oh, I love puppies. And, and I love the way that, I don't know. I don't know, that popcorn crunches when I eat it. Like whatever, people will come up with really random things, but it's something that they hook into personally. So think about it in terms of, oh yeah, I like it, and it's kind of innocuous, and it's kind of, minutia, but I really like this one thing, and that's what I say. So what's something else that this character, who might be really into collecting rocks, might say? Maybe that person who's really into collecting rocks would be into the smell of earth. It's yeah, it's important. So write down your characters' sheets, write down who they are, write down what they physically look like, and of course, telling your audience what a character physically looks like helps them imagine the character, and that's good. You want them to know, you want them to see the character through your eyes. You want them to see what you're seeing, so that they can understand why the world is reacting this way to them, why they react that way to the world. All of that. It's something that, as I mentioned, it gets you through writer's block. It helps a lot. Cultural background is another really big deal. Obviously. You don't have to get too crazy with it, but of course, if you want to specify something, if you are writing a character who is, and as a fantasy writer, I keep thinking of fantasy examples, so whatever, this is what we're talking about, from a warrior race, and they, heck, let's just use the Amazons, the legendary Amazons of ancient Greece, and that sort of thing. You have this tribe of warrior women and this whole warrior woman culture. And of course, there are a lot of different iterations about the Amazon culture and how they did whatever, and how they lived. But the thing that we know is that the women are in charge in that culture, that they are very fierce, formidable fighters, and that they are proud, and that we know that, they have an Amazon queen is a very common thing when people are writing about that culture, which by the way, we do have historical proof. I watched a very cool documentary showing that they found proof that the Amazons are not, or weren't, that they were real, that they were, of course, not necessarily the super diehard, but they were, a tribe of warrior women, and they were very fierce in battle, and they had a lot of the same characteristics as Herodotus. Herodotus is actually, he made the account, the first account, as I understand it. I might not, correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't look this up. I'm remembering randomly. But I believe that Herodotus was the first person to mention the Amazons and speak of them as the tribe of warrior women, all of that, and write about that. And he is known as the father of history, of course, and we generally like to believe that most of what he wrote was true, but we can't be certain. But there was artwork found, there was even genetic evidence found, all sorts of, anyway, yeah, the Amazons, at least according to this documentary that I watched, which was super cool, that was real. They were real. Of course, they weren't all of the things that all of the fantasy television and entertainment and literary industry has fantasized them to be. They were, and we don't know all that much about them, of course. But the fact of the matter is that they existed. And so we know that this is a matriarchal society. We know that they're fierce. We know that they do things. There are stories about them cutting off their left breast to better shoot their bows and arrows. All that, that's how committed they were. So if you have that kind of a warrior culture, and you are having Well, and honestly, you have that kind of cultural background, right? What if you have a male being brought up in the matriarchal society? How does that guy behave? What does he think? How does he perceive the world? He's not going to if he when he goes out into the world, if he's been in a matriarchal society his entire life and he goes out into the world and all of a sudden a man is telling him what to do, he's going to start looking at the women like, "Hey, is this okay? What's up?" And because in his culture that he was raised in, the women made all the rules. So that's, and of course, and if it's, a female, which most people when they write about the Amazons, they write about a female character, then she is going to presume, just walk in with the utmost confidence and say, "I am in charge." And anyone who doesn't think that I'm right, you can challenge me to a battle because that's how we solve this, and I'll defeat you and then I'll win and I'll be right and moving on. And that kind of attitude. So that's incredibly important to, or they could be from like a, Tibetan monastery sort of background where everything is very peaceful and everyone is very introspective and calm. And, meditation is key and it's very quiet. And that person, if they have to go into some loud circus atmosphere all of a sudden, that, it could be offensive to them. It could be very blaring and upsetting to have noise all the time. Or maybe it excites them to have something so completely different from what they grew up in, this, peaceful little hilltop monastery. Who knows? So you need to think of your culture. You need to think, but again, I like to start with your basic stats, with your on those Dungeons and Dragons role-playing character sheets. Start with those basic stats, because once you decide intelligence, constitution, dexterity, charisma, wisdom, strength, all that, and of course you choose if they have a particular gender or whatever, you choose all that stuff. And again, if you're writing fantasy or sci-fi, or, are they an alien? Are they an elf? Are they an ogre? Whatever. All of that plays in. And then you can start to develop from there. And then once you decide what kind of personality that character has, you go, okay, what's their background? And how does that personality of theirs, how did that develop in that culture? Why are they a rebel, or are they the type that rallied against their culture? Are they following the status quo of their culture? What's going on? And then, of course, you also have to take into consideration when you develop your other characters, because you can't, no story just has one character, because then it would just be like, hey, I'm so-and-so. And they stand around doing nothing. You have to interact with someone else in the world. You can have one main character, of course, and you just follow that one person around, but you got to have somebody for them to interact with, or something. Animals, at least. And the animals all have their traits. So I'm losing my train of thought again. You have to figure out how they mesh with the other characters. And you have to figure out, like, are these characters meeting organically in your story? Meaning, are they, well, of course, okay. Are they meaning, organically meaning, does it make sense that they would meet each other? Like, is one of them, a farmer who sells, corn or whatever, and then there's another character that's coming by, and they're a merchant who buys the corn. There's somebody who they're a grocer, they want the corn, so they go to the farm. So of course that you know, those two people, and maybe you know, the merchant that buys the corn from the farmer, they bring a helper to just help load things up, and this helper meets the farmer, and there's a relationship that starts to spring from there. Maybe they have something in common, maybe they hate each other, who knows, but that's an organic meeting. It makes complete sense that these two people would meet and have an interaction, and possibly go on an adventure together, or yeah, or just have an experience, whatever your story may be. And that is something that you need to think about. Or is it a situation where it wouldn't be normal for the characters to meet each other, which generally means that one of your characters is out of their element, in a sense. They're not in a comfort zone. They have run away from home. Who knows what they did, or they're simply forced to be in each other's company by political or school project or whatever it might be. But you can have that completely organic meeting where you have two people that it makes complete sense that they would meet each other and probably have some common interests and probably get along. And then you have the other where you might have somebody was, you know, high ranking in the corporate world. I don't know. I'm bad at corporate world. But anyway, in the corporate world, some executive who suddenly did something, maybe he lost the company a bunch of money by making a stupid mistake, and now he's gotten demoted down to the ground floor, and he's got to interact with people who used to fix his problems, you know, he always thought were beneath him. And, you know, and he doesn't consider it to be his place. You know, all of a sudden he's not there where he thought he should be anymore. And these people, you know, are they treating him well? And how was he as a boss? Like, he could have been a good boss and somebody that they thought was a nice guy just fine, but they knew he was like way, way up there. And then maybe they don't dislike him necessarily, but they just think that he doesn't know what the heck he's doing once he's down in the trenches with the rest of them. And or maybe he was always a really pompous, arrogant jerk who they hated, and then fell from grace, and now they don't want to help him. What happens there? I mean, there's when you have your character's personality already formed, the way the story pours out really makes a huge difference for me. I've been babbling about character development for a little while. Hopefully you've gotten some good tips from it. I hope so. We'll find out. And I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it up. I will mention again that I am planning on doing a character development workshop via Zoom, probably in the spring of 2023. And, you know, obviously I'll make further updates on this podcast, and I will do, you know, updates on my website, HollisJoMcCullumAuthor.com, and social media. And, you know, if you follow me, you'll find out about it. So follow me. And it will, you know, it will be a little bit of money. It won't be a lot. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. It's not going to be expensive. It's not going to be expensive, because I will be doing it from the comfort of my own home via Zoom. And I will probably go ahead and just get everything. I'll probably cap it at a certain amount of participants so that I can actually go through and work with each person individually. And we can all sort of discuss and build a character using the way that I like to build characters. And if you don't like my way, that's totally legitimate. But, and honestly, even if you do the workshop, you go through my method and you say, it's not entirely for me, but there are some pieces of this that I actually find insightful and helpful. That's fantastic. That's what I want. I want to help. I'm not trying to force my methods upon you. I'm just trying to help you out because I know that there have been a couple of people who've asked me for help with character development in particular, actually, and I actually walked a friend through how I do it and helped them create their characters that way, and they said that they loved it. They said it actually helped them write the story better. They really felt like it was a much richer story, and the characters were they were more attached to their own characters as a result. So that was, of course, wonderful for me, and I've had that feedback from other writers that I have, given advice to when requested, and they've always seemed. They've always told me that it was helpful. They've always told me that they used my methods afterward. And so I thought, why don't I share the love a little bit? And again, if it doesn't entirely match your style, no worries. But perhaps if you get stuck with character development, or you find that you just want another little something to really tip your story into something more enriching, and more engaging than what it is, the key to that is always your characters. The story's important. The story, of course, is crazy important, but your characters are the ones living it, and they're the ones driving it. So they are in many ways more important than the story itself. And frankly, if they don't like your character, they're probably not going to read your book or watch your movie. I know we've all, and that's another, if they can't relate, and people love villains, people love reading about jerks. They don't want to meet them in real life, but it's like hot gossip. You're like, you reading about this fictional person who's a pain in the neck. That's intriguing. But if the character isn't well developed and the person is not engaged, then they might not bother continue reading or finishing the book. So don't focus don't it's more important to get meticulous with your character development in my eyes than it is to get meticulous with your plotting, because once you have your characters sussed out, which I will help you do. If you would like my help, I would love to help you, and I'll let you know when that workshop is coming up. Yay! And of course, if you do the recording of that workshop, I will, always be available via email to answer questions that you have. So the other thing is the Queen Witch, the updates with that. I think we might be done with editing with the sequel. And maybe, I'll still edit it just a little bit, but the main scope of editing, all the hard crying parts are over. So that is very exciting. And I, as many of you know, I design a lot of my own covers and page layouts. So I am going to be designing the cover for the Queen Witch, and I have started doing that, and I have some concepts one in particular that I'm very, 99.9% going to move forward with that one, and really excited about that. And I'm also very, very excited about the interior page layout. I have some cool ideas about that. So it's coming. The Queen Witch, my projected for myself was April of 2023, but honestly, if things keep developing the way they are, it might come out sooner. Maybe. So yeah, I'm sticking with spring, like April of 2023 for now, but yeah, it might be March. So that's great. Next episode of this podcast is going to be on December 11th, which I always do them live on a Sunday. Obviously you can listen anytime on Spotify and my YouTube channel and probably wherever, many places that you get your podcasts. I think I posted to to Facebook as well. I'll be, again, and I'm very honest about this, I don't check my Facebook. I'm bad about checking my Facebook, but you can go and get my content there. Everything that I post on my Instagram gets auto-posted to Facebook. You get all the updates. And but as far as engagement is concerned, if you would like to engage with me, which I would love you to do, my website's a great place to engage with me. My Instagram, Hollis Jo McCullum, at Hollis Jo McCullum, that's a great place to engage with me. That's where I am most of the time. LinkedIn, you can find me sometimes, and of course YouTube. You can, or comment, have fun. I'd love to chat with you, but honestly, I just don't get on Facebook. So that's pretty much it for this week's episode. So thank you.